It is Thursday, September 5th, 2019. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandages. In the next several minutes, this is going to be your one-stop shop on everything you need to know about Hurricane Dorian and its impacts on North Carolina and southeastern Virginia. Now, a lot of you have asked, how long have we been tracking Dorian? It seems like we've been talking about it forever. But when we look back at the records, we are nowhere even close to the longest hurricane on record. In fact, it was Hurricane John. Peaked at a Category 5. It was around for 31 days. It traveled so far throughout the Pacific, it crossed the date line, became a typhoon, and then crossed back and ended as a tropical depression almost near Alaska. 7,100 miles. Dorian, it was named on August 24th, so it's only been around for 13 days. The latest advisory here coming out at 3 o'clock from the National Hurricane Center. We're getting hourly updates from them that it is so close to land. It's only about a couple dozen miles off the coastline of South Carolina right now, passed just very close to Charleston overnight. Northeast will move in around 8 miles per hour with 110 mile per hour winds. Now, last night it did undergo a brief period of re-intensification like we had forecast. That's because it moved over the Gulf Stream. Very, very warm waters there. Took advantage of that. Briefly climbed back up to a major Category 3 hurricane. But really, we're splitting hairs because you look back at 110 miles per hour right now. To be a Category 3, you need 111. So it peaked last night at 115 or so as it moved over those very warm waters. Here's the forecast track with those gusts up to 130 right now, taking a northeasterly turn, possibly interacting with Cape Fear and then Cape Lookout and right over Cape Hatteras potentially as we head into late tonight and very early tomorrow morning. Here's a plotted location, forecast location tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. 100 mile per hour winds at that point with a very large wind field before it picks up its forward motion and heads out into the open Atlantic. Radar imagery showing what you'd expect. Very, very heavy rainfall wrapping around that center of circulation, moving through the Charleston area, out ahead of it to the northeast, the onshore flow, behind it offshore, blowing all the floodwaters that moved up over Charleston and the Battery Park area back out over the open Atlantic there. Out to the north of it, a specific threat we're going to actually talk a little bit more about is the severe weather threat. More importantly, tornadoes. These two boxes you see here are tornado watches to the north of the system. We've already seen numerous tornadoes out in coastal North Carolina earlier this morning that caused a ton of damage. So here are the threats from Dorian. Wind, tropical storm or hurricane force dependent on your location and the exact track of the system. Storm surge as much as 8 feet was possible in South Carolina, moving into North Carolina now. Freshwater flooding, 6 to 12 inches of rain possible in some locations. Tidal flooding, astronomically higher tides already. The high tide cycle on Friday afternoon looks to be the biggest high tide here in our area locally. Coastal erosion along the beaches and the ocean front, and then severe weather, that tornado threat too. So we're going to go through one by one each of those threats. Watches and warnings out there now. We no longer have any watches. They've all been upgraded to warnings. In the orange, tropical storm warning. In the pink, hurricane warning for this specific wind speed. Up and over tropical storm force, 39 to 73 miles per hour. All in this cone here in the yellow. Hurricane force winds now extend out about 60 miles from the center. That wind field expected to get a little bit larger as it gains that latitude. So you can see the indication of how far inland the tropical storm force winds go, up and over much of northeastern North Carolina. All of the Outer Banks will likely be experiencing some hurricane force winds. Gusts up to 75 to 95 miles per hour, especially the closer you get to Hatteras and the center of Dorian's potential track. Those tropical storm force winds making it all the way into southeastern Virginia before it clears the area by later Friday afternoon. Here's more specifically. Pick a city or a town that you're closest to and look at the wind gusts as we head farther out into the future here. Here we are overnight tonight. Into very early Friday morning, we're starting to see the winds really pick up down towards Hatteras, up and over hurricane force. But watch what happens here as the center tracks right over Hatteras. We see the winds significantly drop off. In the center of a hurricane, the winds almost go calm. So that's what we could be seeing here right over Hatteras if, in fact, the eye tracks right over there. And then the winds turn in the other direction, picking right back up and over 80 miles per hour, seeing the winds out of the north now in south side Virginia and over into northeastern North Carolina before things start to wrap up and push away by later in the afternoon on Friday. And even by late in the evening, we're still looking at some pretty breezy conditions at 8 p.m. Still 25 to 35 miles per hour. Here's a little bit closer look of all of our area here in Hampton Roads in northeast North Carolina, played out with the European model and the potential wind gusts Here we are at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Seeing gusts well over 50 miles per hour through much of Southside, Chesapeake, over into Virginia Beach and Norfolk, down into Elizabeth City, Edenton, Kill Devil Hills, clocking a wind gust at 1:30 in the afternoon, potentially of 84 miles per hour, nearly 70 at the ocean front in Virginia Beach, up and over 60 in Norfolk. And then as it begins to pull away, we see that shift in winds out of the northwest, bringing that sound side flooding as the storm exits off to the east and northeast, and we are still breezy overnight Friday and an early Saturday before the winds finally let up. So with those strong winds, what's the potential of seeing your power go out? Well, that power outage index puts numerous widespread power outages potentially in northeastern North Carolina, especially down through the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So make sure you are prepared for that and have that expectation of the lights possibly going out. Next up is storm surge threat. We have storm surge warnings pretty much for the entire area in Southside, up through the peninsula and down into northeastern North Carolina. And that's for the storm surge forecast above normal tide of 2 to 4 feet in the areas in blue, 4 to 6 feet, covered up by the logo there, up to down to the Outer Banks, 4 to 6 feet potentially, both on the ocean side and the sound side. How much rainfall can we expect? That freshwater flooding could be an issue here, especially the farther south and east you're located, dependent on the exact track, because there's going to be a sharp cutoff to the northwest here. Some spots at a cutoff might not see much at all, less than a half an inch. And you see the European model pretty much on board with the very similar scenario, almost down to nothing towards Richmond and 5 to 8 inches down to the southeast and southeastern Virginia Beach and northeastern North Carolina. Even our in-house model here, the RPM, that runs off the NAM, which is also an American model, has slightly higher numbers, but in the same locations, around 5 to 8 inches there, sharp cutoff to the north and west. Now, how about those tides? The Friday afternoon tide around 4 o'clock at Sewell's Point coming in around 6.5 to 7 feet. The official forecast number is around 6.7. That would lead to some major flooding. Even the high tide early Saturday morning could have some issues with it with minor flooding. Out in Yorktown, those tides peaking at 5.6 feet. Friday afternoon's high tide, and Saturday mornings we have nuisance flooding back in the picture at 4.4. And Duck down through the Outer Banks in North Carolina. Major flooding forecast there. Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock with the high tide 7.1 feet in the forecast. Let's break it on down depending on where you're located. We'll start off in inland Hampton Roads. Timing has not changed. Late tonight through your day on Friday. We're looking at the winds starting out of the northeast, ending out of the northwest, 30 to 40 miles per hour with gusts to 50, 1 to 5 inches. The reason why there is such a large spread is because lower numbers to the northwest, higher numbers to the southeast, closer to the coastline, near the center of Dorian. Moderate tidal flooding in those locations, and the overall impact looks to be moderate as well. As coastal Hampton Roads here, a little bit closer to the center of Dorian, winds higher, 40 to 55 with gusts to 65. That rainfall total could be 4 to 8 with some locally higher amounts depending on the overall banding that sets up. Tidal flooding will be major. Overall impact looks to be moderate to high. Inland northeastern North Carolina, winds there 30 to 50, gusts to around 70. Same in terms of rainfall, 4 to 8, moderate to major tidal flooding, and moderate to high overall impact. Now let's get through the Outer Banks. We'll start northern, end up southern. Thursday through Friday, we're looking at 40 to 60 mile per hour winds with gusts to 80. 5 to 10 inches of rain, locally higher. We could see some spots coming in with about a foot of rain, major tidal flooding, and a high impact. Closer to the center, in fact, it's forecast to move right over Hatteras. 50 to 80 mile per hour winds, gusts 90, 95, even close to 100, with 5 to 10 inches of rain being driven by that heavy wind. Major tidal flooding on top of that, both sound side and ocean side. Significant overall impact. All right, let's talk about the severe threat now. Here's the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for today. Remember, it's a 5-level system. This puts it at level 3. In the areas in orange here, all of coastal North Carolina for that threat, the tornadoes possible with the Dorian outer bands. Even that's level 2 risk stretches up north into southeastern Virginia and far northeastern North Carolina here is at a level 3 for that potential to grow as it lifts northwards. It's really for that tornado threat. 15% chance labeled in the red. And it's just much easier in this overall setup. Dorian is a large rotation in the atmosphere, and it makes it a little easier to spin up some tornadoes that could cause some serious damage like we've already seen. Out to tomorrow, the severe threat drops to a level 1, but I bet you that will be changed in the forecast and maybe overspreading a little more, but that threat is there once again for tomorrow, especially farther north as Dorian continues to track in that general overall direction. That's a breakdown of what you can expect for Dorian as it heads in our direction late tonight and on into Friday. If you have any questions, we have you covered here on 13 News Now. We have long-term broadcasting plans for later on tonight, into the overnight, and through much of the day tomorrow, and on all of the different social media platforms. So don't be afraid to contact us that way. You can also download the 13 News Now app. If the power does go out, you'll be able to get all of the information there and on our website, 13newsnow.com.